Rolex has had the world wrapped around its finger since forever now, and the watches retail for more than $50,000. But the process of making these Rolexes is what helped it become a world-famous brand. Rolex is not just a brand, but more like a status symbol. And when you're making something for the rich elite, you gotta ensure quality, right? That is exactly what Rolex does. So be sure to watch till the very end and find out how the $50,000 watches are actually made. But first, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to get all the latest updates. Rolex is a huge name in the world of luxury, and it wouldn't be wrong to say that it has become one of the biggest watch companies. It's all because of quality assurance and the promise of making the world's best watches by Rolex. In addition, Rolex watches aren't just great in quality, but they are also the most decent and aesthetically pleasing ones you'll ever see. And it's all because of how much attention Rolex pays to the making of these watches. The manufacturers of Rolex use steel that is very unique and one of a kind. The regular manufacturers usually use stainless steel 316L, which is good enough, but not premium, and doesn't give a luxurious feel. On the other hand, Rolex uses a 904L steel, which is very rare. Other brands still use 316L steel for their watches, but Rolex started using their own unique steel in 1988, and that's why their watches have their own significance. The steel that Rolex uses is a lot more resistant to rust, and it assures you that the watch is going to last longer. Also, it's corrosion resistant. But what actually is unique is the ability of a Rolex to hold polish. The intricate interior of the Rolex watch isn't just random. You should know that a lot of research has gone into perfecting the overall build of Rolex watches. Did you know that Rolex has its very own science lab for research and making its watches a lot more efficient and advanced? It shouldn't surprise anyone that Rolex has a research library, as the brand indeed has perfected the design and performance of its watch over the past couple of decades. It goes without saying that this research is paying off, in the form of how every watch Rolex launches sells like hotcakes. Each one of Rolex's facilities has not just one, but multiple labs to keep an eye on the quality of their watches. These labs are not just working on making Rolex watches advanced and adding new features, but they also work on the manufacturing process. These labs work day and night to reduce costs and optimize the manufacturing process of Rolex. The research facility of Rolex also has a chemistry lab that keeps a check on the lubricants used in Rolex watches. Not only that, did you know that a certain type of oil is also used in the making of Rolex watches? And it is important for the chemistry lab to always monitor the oil. Each and every detail of these watches is properly analyzed. The process of manufacturing a Rolex is so intricate that some of the parts are even checked under an electron microscope and spectrometer. The workers at Rolex facilities can analyze the techniques closely with these devices. In addition, a great number of small objects and screws are involved in making a complete Rolex watch. And sometimes, these pieces are so small that it becomes difficult to assemble them without a microscope. The research facility of Rolex makes sure to find solutions and remedies to any problems, and repair work also takes place in these facilities. So if you really want to know how Rolex watches are made, most of the work is done inside research labs, like some sort of scientific experiment. And that's what makes Rolex so unique from other watches out there. Have you been fortunate enough to be an owner and wearer of a Rolex watch? Do dish in the comments section below. Other than having a fully fledged science lab, Rolex also uses its manpower to assemble the watches. Yes, it's nothing more than a rumor that Rolex uses machinery to assemble its watches. Rolex has never really disclosed how they assemble their watches. Most people just believe that the watches are assembled automatically using different machines. But in reality, all the Rolex watches are specifically assembled by hand by the workers at Rolex facilities. It almost feels like a luxury these days for watches to be made by trained craftspeople. And even though Rolex does use different machines in the manufacturing process, the greater part of its watch assembly happens with human hands. While we're at it, you should also know that Rolex has some of the most advanced and intricate machinery ever. This machinery is mainly used for filling and sorting all the pieces and handling them with extreme care. Some of the machines are operated by the workers at Rolex, and everything from the high-end bracelets to watches is assembled while keeping quality in mind. It wouldn't be wrong to say that Rolex is very strict when it comes to quality control. It's even said that Rolex checks everything and then rechecks it and then checks again. And that's the very reason why buyers trust Rolex with eyes closed. Rolex must ensure that after leaving the factory, the watches stay intact, or else it could jeopardize the huge reputation of the company. The shipments of Rolex are sent to COSC for certification, and tests are conducted before the watches actually make it to the store. Also, Rolex doesn't shy away from investing a whole lot of money in machinery. In the master supply room, there are machines worth thousands of dollars that are meant to work on the watches. The machines make different parts of the watches and even deliver them within 8 minutes. Whenever the workers at Rolex need an extra hand, robotic arms come to their rescue and help them perform rather difficult tasks in no time. Additionally, various parts of Rolex are washed within a machine. This is an initial polishing phase and makes the parts very shiny. These parts are polished several times to give that glass finish that Rolex is known for. So it wouldn't be wrong to say that Rolex uses robots in the manufacturing process of its watches quite a lot, but the company isn't completely dependent on that. The mantra at Rolex is that if robots are doing something better, let them do it. And if humans are doing something else better, let them do that. What are your thoughts so far on this meticulous process? Please share with us in the comments section below. Did you know that Rolex makes its very own gold? It doesn't mean they create everything in the facility, but when it comes to the gold used for their watches, they don't compromise, and that's why they make their own gold. In addition to this, they receive steel from some suppliers, but for the most part, they make their own steel in their facility too. So everything from gold to platinum and steel is made inside the Rolex facilities. Rolex uses huge kilns and high flames to melt different metals, and then they make bracelets and watches out of it. Rolex employees keep a close eye on their gold production to ensure that they're making the best quality of gold that looks second to none. So much so that Rolex also has a fully fledged foundry in its factory, just so they can make their own gold. There is literally no other watch manufacturing company that makes their own gold. When it comes to testing the watches, the process is a lot more intense than you might imagine. The world-famous Oyster watches are tested several times just to see if they're water-resistant or not. For checking water resistance, air pressure tanks are used, for the most part. The process starts by placing the watch in a chamber that is filled with air. Then the watch is analyzed to see if the pressure changes or not. If it does, it means some of the air got through the watch case, and it could lead to problems in the assembling process and in the performance of the watch. Rolex is so cautious about its watches that each case is constantly being tested. They test the cases before placing a dial, and then after placing it, they check once again, just to make sure that everything stays intact. In addition to this, Rolex also makes watches that divers can wear under the sea. For these watches, they need to have specialized testing processes. The watches made for divers are placed in huge tubes that are then filled with water. This test checks whether the watches are water resistant for up to 300 meters. The test itself isn't very convenient and involves quite a complicated system. After taking the watches out of the tank, another test is performed that determines whether any water entered the interior of the watch. And just so you know, the manufacturing process of Rolex is so robust that only 1 in 1,000 watches fails to pass this water test. It is often said that Rolex gets a little too paranoid while buying material from its suppliers. Rolex gets diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and other stones from independent companies, so they need a team of gemologists for the certification. And yet they do have a massive team that not only buys the gems, but also tests and arranges them. These gemologists make sure that the gems being used in Rolex watches are authentic, because the company pays thousands of dollars on a single gem at times. They can't really afford to be scammed. These gemologists use various equipment, including X-ray, to make sure that the diamonds are of the highest quality and worth the price. It was recently revealed by Rolex that they have discovered fake diamonds during the purchasing process. But it only happened twice. You heard that right. Buyers tried to sell fake diamonds to Rolex twice. And the gemologists figured it out immediately. Even though Rolex has bought millions of gems over a few decades, they're still very cautious about it. Rolex doesn't let the machines handle these precious gems because they need extreme care. So no matter how big or small these gems are, Rolex makes sure that each gem or diamond is handled by a human hand and assembled properly. People often consider Rolex a company that mass produces its watches, but seeing the actual craftsmanship involved in its watches, it's far from being a mass producer. Lastly, just because Rolex makes millions of watches a year doesn't mean that they make these watches quickly. In fact, Rolex revealed some time ago that making just one Rolex watch takes them a whole year. It isn't a bizarre claim, but the truth, because everything is first researched, then made inside the labs and factories of Rolex. Then the additional material is purchased, like gems and diamonds. Gold is also made, and the assembly alone takes several weeks. It is all because of how intricate the process of making a Rolex watch is. The dial alone takes several weeks to make, as there are so many small parts that need to be assembled. Now, if you're wondering why Rolex goes to all this trouble, well, it's so they can make a watch that's worth $50,000. And all Rolex watches actually do justify the amount you pay for them, because they're so unique and of the utmost quality. What are your thoughts on the manufacturing process of Rolex watches? Tell us in the comments section. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to get the latest updates. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, adios from our side.